really excited. I'm very excited to connect with the guest that I have today. Dr. Tina Wellsome is someone who is working with clients all over right now to help them improve their well-being through movement. And I feel like this is such a topical issue right now because our relationship to space has changed so quickly. And so without further ado, I'm going to add Tina here. Hi,
Hi, how are you?
it's so nice to talk to you.
You too. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine,
All
and I
right.
know it's a bit windy, but the truth is, this platform and these videos have been pretty organic in nature, and I have two kids too, and the truth is that one of them always has the potential to burst into my room.
That's why I came outside.
Yeah. Um, and it's funny because that was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you because we're all in this, quarantine conundrum and our relationship to space
Yes.
is so different. And so I really feel like with that comes our possible relationship to the amount of space we have between us and our loved ones,
Or lack thereof.
or lack thereof. Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, homeschool was an event this morning at my house, and my little one was refusing to do like the last 15-minute thing he had to do before he was free, and he just fell apart, and
Yeah.
he was all up in my business, hanging on me, crying, and I was like, oh, I have to go. I have to
I
finish. I
know.
have this thing. And then I laughed because one of my colleagues had given me this Angels in Your Business Oracle deck, and he likes to pull my card for me. So I calmed him down by letting him shuffle the deck and pick my card, and my card said grounding. And I laughed because I'm like, and when you read the description, it says get out in nature, get out and put your feet on the earth. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I live on
Yeah.
this beautiful lake.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
and I
Wow.
figured, and it's actually 57 degrees here in New York. We had snow the other day, but today it's sunny. So I was like, I'm going to drive my car. I live on the far side in a tiny little house. So space is of a premium. My oldest son is taking a final right now. And I thought, I'm just going to drive across the lake by myself and go outside. So,
Something else I've realized too in starting to do these lives and just putting my face on camera in general is that like there's never really a perfect time,
no,
and you never really feel perfect,
no.
like honestly I always feel like I need to be more grounded, more present, more, I don't know, groomed, like, and
More
it's
everything.
more everything. And especially right now, because again, like time and space and everything is at such a premium,
Yes.
that it just feels like it's quite humbling actually. And it's been an interesting process for me to, commence these lives and this whole like entrepreneurial journey at this
Yes.
time because it's really testing me to
Yeah.
go about it
Yes, to
in
move
a different.
outside of your comfort zone and reevaluate your priorities and
Yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah,
you know
and be okay with how it is.
yeah, and realize that you will be okay when you succeed, and you will be
Yeah.
okay if you fail, and you learn a lesson and you move on. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think I forget. There's that quote that talks about that. Instead of like becoming who you're meant to be, it's a process of unbecoming who you're not
Oh,
meant to be,
I think about that
and
all the time. Yeah.
and I feel like this time you kind of have to stop and pause and say, like, what was my life full of, right?
Yeah.
We were so busy rushing from one thing to the next, and one soccer practice to the next, one scout event to the next,
Yeah.
church and religious education and school events and work and everything else. And it makes you kind of pause and say, what was my life full of, and what do I want it to be full of? And
Yeah.
so maybe this is a good thing for us to unbecome what we were told that we were supposed to be, and try to decide who it is we really do want to be.
I like that gives me shivers and like I honestly can't agree more and mostly because like there really is no other way. like really there isn't.
Right.
Like what, and so I don't know, I really feel like out of the get-go, you and I have just started like connecting and chatting, and I like have my little questions that I was going to ask you, but it just has felt so natural to go in like any conversational direction with you.
Of course, yeah.
But I've been following you for a little while now, and I've been so interested in what you're doing, and I'm so interested now that I get a chance to talk to you to learn about, what it is you're doing and how it is you became that. Like what led you to this point?
Well, that's a good question, and it's funny. After we're done with this, I'll have to ask you when you as an outsider who doesn't know me looks at what you see me putting out there. I'd be curious to know what it is that you're seeing, because we can't always see ourselves.
Yeah, you're always
reflected.
in it.
Yeah. So by trade or by nature or education, I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I crashed into that profession, actually. I was in undergraduate I went to San Diego State. I grew up in California, and I originally had intended to go to medical school. So I, went to my college, and I knew I had this, I had to get this bachelor's degree and then take the MCAT and go to medical school. And I was also a dance major at the time. So movement's always been a big part of my life, whether it was sports or gymnastics or dance or cheerleading or whatever it is. But then I got in a very bad car accident my junior year, and I was hit by a drunk driver, and my car was totaled. And I fortunately didn't break anything, but I did a lot of muscle and ligamentous damage, so a lot of instability in my joints and things like that. So I lived with chronic pain for a long time. But after that, I started, I had more interaction with physicians and hospitals and tests and procedures, and ended up in physical therapy. And
Oh, I lost you.
oh, sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I kind of realized that when I got into physical therapy, that I really enjoyed that process of that more movement-oriented therapy and that more human connected part of therapy. I certainly never wanted to be a surgeon and have my patient, anesthetized and, on the table. But with physical therapy, there's so much about what you do with a person that goes beyond the physical. It's, understanding who they are and what their goals in life are, and what, what this injury or activity, how it's affecting their perception of themselves. If it's an athlete and it ends their career, or it's, keeps them from going back to their vocation or their job, or they can't care for their family. So I think really always was very deep in the kind of who is my patient and what do they think and feel and desire. And so the first part of my career was just really working as a physical therapist in a rehab hospital with all different kinds of patients, and then also in outpatient orthopedic clinics, because that's my specialty is orthopedics.
It's a bit windy. Can you hear the wind? I just want to hear you, because it's like this. Your story is so interesting.
I will go into my car and block.
And I'm waffling because it's so beautiful.
Here, I'll turn the camera, and I will.
You have such a your story is really
I'm trying to turn it around as I walk to my car so you guys can see the beautiful.
It looks incredible there, and I feel like you must have quite a bit of gratitude for all of this right now, probably more than you ever did.
Oops, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we'll still get some light here. We can see trees above. So I guess for me, the first part of my career was being actually doing the job of a physical therapist and being in a hospital setting. And then, I'm going to unplug this. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's on my Bluetooth in my car, so I'm I don't want to give you feedback. And then I think the second part of my career was when I moved into academia, and I started teaching in a physical therapy program. And that was kind of cool because I still treat patients, but instead of always working one-on-one with the patient, I get to work 1-on-45 with new therapists who are coming into the profession, and I get to share my knowledge. Want to move into educating and mentoring and masterminding people on a larger level on those things that they can do for themselves in their own home and in their own life. Because I think that our healthcare system, I think it fails us. I think, it treats us when we're sick. It gets rid of the illness. It does the surgical correction. It, tells us what to do while we're injured, and then it stops. And it never quite gets us fully back into our life. And I think it never also on that wellness spectrum gets us to the point where we can fully activate like our true potential of being well and being happy and being fulfilled. So I really want to be more in that kind of prevention and wellness realm on all of those levels of wellness, not just the physical piece, but also the emotional, the social with our relationships, your intellectual and, growth mindset, your spiritual health, financial, vocational, and environmental as well. So to me, it's kind of like I see this as an integrated person, that's really operating at their highest potential on all of those aspects so that they really can feel fulfilled and live a life that they love kind of by design, not by default.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of where I see myself now.
Yeah, I mean, it encompasses a lot, but the truth is it's all kind of related, right? So where do you draw that line?
Right.
And
how do you section out parts of yourself? You can't.
I know. Yeah. And so what kind of like in a typical day for you or a typical week, like what kinds of clients and like main pain points have you been addressing?
Well, I would say from as a physical therapist, when I physically work with people, I tend to find I'm the therapist of last resort. I'm the person that they find when they've tried everything else and it hasn't worked. They've had surgery, they've had chronic pain for a long time, and somehow somebody puts my name in front of them and they end up. And I love that. I love being able to help somebody that's been in pain for 5, 10, 20 years and, help resolve that for them so that they actually can finally get past it. I think the thing that always breaks my heart, though, is when they say to me, where were you 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Or why didn't my doctor tell me this? Or why didn't I know this existed? And it's just like, why not? Like, why don't you? And so I think that's kind of part of my mission is, in my podcast, I want to bring all of these different alternative and complementary therapies and thoughts and books and concepts to people so that they recognize that there are just so many options out there. And, for each of us, it really depends on who we are individually, what we need, but also where are we at on our growth journey, where we're ready to hear that message. So I just figure that the more that that's out there and available to people, the better it will be, because at least they'll know it's there, and if I keep putting it out there, then they'll come back to it when they're ready for it, is kind of what I figure. Yeah,
for sure. So would you say that those are the main types of things that you're talking about on your podcast right now? Like what are
Yeah. So I try, I really love the 8 pillars of wellness, just because I think those 8 areas, if you really look into each of them, I think you're really going to look at yourself as a complete human being.
What are they for people who don't know?
Sure. So the first one, I kind of have them in my own linear structure because for me, it's how they fit as the color that I see them, but it's also kind of how I see them fit as I think they're where you need to start. So I start with emotional because I think that your heart is really like the soul of who you are, and it's where your dreams and your desires and your hopes and your passions and who you really are starts with. So I think you could take two patients with the same physical diagnosis, and one of them has a heart that says, I want to keep doing my job, I'll do anything, and they work really hard. And another person, their heart might not be in their job. And so they might have the same level of disability or the same injury or the same amount of healing to do, but because their heart's not in the process, we're forcing them to do something, to go down this road that isn't really what they want. So I think it's very important for us to start with that emotional piece.
Yeah.
And then I moved from emotional to social, which is your relationship health and your relationship wellness. And I think that's the next critical to me, because I think that the number one thing that all human beings crave is a connection, a sense of belonging, a sense of worth and value and connection to the people in their life, whether it's their family of origin or, a significant other, or their friends or their children or their colleagues or their friend, whatever it is. And I think that really the most important social relationship is actually the one that we don't spend enough time on, which is our relationship to ourselves. So I think that, the emotional piece kind of feeds into what is my relationship with who I am, and do I know who my authentic self is? And then that's the person I want to interact with all of these other people. So I kind of go that way. Next, I kind of think about intellectual, because I think that we know scientifically that what you feel and what your emotions and your feelings then guide what you think, right? You interpret them, you put them into that rumbling in my stomach I'm feeling right now is telling me that I forgot to eat lunch today and I'm hungry. So I put that into like a conscious thought. And then that intellectual piece, or our thoughts, are what drive our behaviors. So I think we have to understand, what do I feel? What do I want? What do I think about it? And then that's going to help me go after the rest of the things that I want in my life.
Yeah.
So intellectual I see is like all kind of self-development, self-help, growth mindset, being open to learning, being curious, being willing to explore, getting out of your comfort zone, that kind of stuff. And then the next piece is spiritual wellness. And so spiritual wellness, I think a lot of us think of as our religion, because I think that's kind of what society's conditioned us to say, right? I grew up Catholic. I believe in God. Here's the church I go to. Here's the cultural thing I'm familiar with, comfortable with. But I think it really goes so much deeper than that. And I think as adults, we have to pause and say, do we agree with what our church stood for or taught us? Is that truly our belief system? It was the belief system of our parents or whoever raised us. But I've always been very open to, I've had a lot of different friends that were Jewish and Mormon, and I've always been interested in their faiths. Like, how are your beliefs similar or different from mine? And I do a lot of yoga, so I have a lot of experience with Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism as well. And I'm a big believer in the universe and fate and karma and a divine being and a divine power. And, so however it is, I think everyone defines it. But I think that's, and it could be that you say, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in God. That's okay. That's still a belief system. But you have some belief in maybe in yourself or your sense of purpose on this planet. So there's always something that guides you, right? That kind of keeps you going and helps you have faith on a dark day. And then there's the physical piece, which, strength, range of motion, balance, flexibility, functional activities, being able to do the activities we like to do, all the way up to, high performance, right? Being an athlete or a runner or competing in things. And then financial wealth or financial wellness. I think of one in the money sense, right? Is, we want to be abundant and affluent and be able to support ourselves in our life with our job or our businesses we're building or whatever. But I also think it's our own self-worth, our sense of self-worth. And I think it's not just, do I have enough money, but it's also, do I have enough time? Do I have enough energy, right? So kind of all of those resources that you give to other people and that other people would give back to you in return in various exchanges. So I think that, finding out how that works for you and how you see that, that being well in your world is important. Environmental could be, looking at this beautiful lake that I live on, it could be global warming and pollution and, environmental concerns at large. but also on a more personal level to where you are yourself is, what is the environment you find yourself in? And, you know, is that environment noisy? Is it quiet? Is it crowded? Is it open? How does it make you feel? So, for example, we started this conversation talking about, you know, being in the tiny house and having too many people on top of each other, and I just needed to get out of it. So, recognizing for yourself, what does that environment offer me, or how does it affect me in a good or a bad way, and being able to switch that up. I think a lot of times you think about like a toxic work environment, right? The people that you surround yourself, you know, is certainly the environment that you put yourself in as well. And then the last one is vocational, which again, we could go from the relationships we have with our coworkers. We could talk about the environment of the space that we're in at our job, but we also could talk about just our vocation. Like, what is our calling? What is our passion? You know, are we fulfilled by it? Are we simply doing a job? Are we in our zone of good enough? Are we in our zone of, you know, excellence, or are we pushing to be in our zone of genius? You know, and your vocation doesn't necessarily have to be your job either. It could be volunteer work that you could do. It could be being a stay-at-home caregiver for parents or children. Your, you know, whatever your life role is, whatever fills your day, you know, is it contributing to your overall well-being? So that's kind of how I look at the gamut of all of those elements that, you know, some of them we tend to focus on more and be more aware of. Some of them
I'm going to ask. Yeah. And my other question was going to be, so you take your patients through this kind of like linear journey of, you know, different aspects of them and the people in the space and everything that they relate to. Do you find that everyone is open and receptive to exploring all of these, or do you find that you work with a lot of like what do you do when someone is, for instance, as far as the emotional aspect, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe in going into work with a physical therapist, you may not necessarily realize that you're signing up to look at some of these like deep-seated emotional kind of blockages or issues that you may have had.
Right.
Is that something that you deal with often, or?
I do. I think it's interesting. I think sometimes I used to work, part of my teaching job was running these small group mastermind sessions. And I used to work with a gentleman who's long retired, and he became a PT back in the day when it was just a certificate program. And then it became a bachelor's and then a master's and a doctorate. But he actually had his PhD in psychology. And he and I used to laugh because he would talk about all these psychologic theories, and I would be like, oh, I don't know about that, I just do this. And he would laugh at me and he goes, you are the most psychologically minded physical therapist I've ever met in my entire career. And I think that, you know, it's kind of like we've heard the expression that people come to you for what they want and you give them what they need, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, people come to me because they have back pain and they want that to be gone. But so many of the pains in our body are psychosomatic. They come from our toxic work environment. They come from us being a mother thinks that the best thing to be is selfless, but yet we're not taking care of ourselves. Or, you know, it's our marriage and all the tension in our marriage is going to our neck or our back or whatever. So I think that what I've always just naturally provided for people is, while I'm treating their body, I'm a safe space for them to also talk to me about those things. And in them talking about it in that comfortable, trusting, safe space over, you know, a couple weeks or a couple months, or some patients I've had on and off for years for various different diagnoses. I think it's almost like therapy or like counseling, in that, you know, they're verbalizing those things. They're venting their fears, their frustrations. They're hearing themselves put into words what it is that's really concerning them. They have these aha moments. You know, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I certainly, as a human being, can say, wow, it sounds like you're really not happy at your job. You know, is there anything you can change with that? And then they're like, yeah, you know, I should, or, you know. And it's been amazing to me to see chronic pain go away when people change those things that aren't the physical things. They're, you know, they change their job, their environment, they move to a bigger house, a smaller house. they deal with some financial things, they finish a divorce, and all of a sudden the pain is gone. And you're like, oh, isn't that amazing? I didn't really have to do anything but be present.
It's interesting to me too, how we began the conversation talking about, you know, how life and as you evolve and kind of come more into yourself, it's more about like, it's less about doing and more about, you know, being and just and letting go and allowing in a lot of ways. And so it's interesting to me with you working with people and helping them to, because the way I envision pain is really just us, our bodies holding on to energy. Right. And so some of it can be from like a physical injury for sure, where there's, you know, something that occurred, but so much of it is just us like harboring stuff
or holding on to that story that we're telling
that story
or that fear. And I always tell my PT students that, you know, the very first thing that they should always seek to do with a patient is establish rapport. Because patients, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have or, you know, how many specialty certifications or how much experience you have. People really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that's usually where I start with my students. Then I also tell them the very first session, they're not going to figure out everything that's going to, you know, we don't have a crystal ball. I kind of understand how, you know, the body and nature works and healing works. I can, you know, I make a hypothesis as to how long it's going to take those tissues to heal based upon the damage that was done to them. But the human factor, you know, I teach a class on the psychology of motivation and understanding like, what is it? How do you motivate people? Do you think you can, or do you think that's just innate? And if you think you can, how do you do that? And we talk about how, you know, when the physical body actually feels pain, that's called a noxious stimuli. So if you pinch yourself or, you know, something hurts, biologic tissues are being deformed, your body does process that as input into your brain. But then there's these two other huge circles that kind of interact and play into it. And one is your knowledge. So if you're pinching me and I know you're not going to harm me, or at worst, you're going to leave a bruise and I'm going to heal, I can rationalize what that pain is. And it doesn't cause me as much, it doesn't cause the pain to be as great. The third circle that really plays into it is the emotional piece of it. So you can, again, have the same biologic noxious stimuli, understand what it is, but if your emotional state is such that you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to go back to my job, or oh my God, I'm never going to be able to take care of my child, and you kind of go into that big emotional response to it, then those overlapping circles, that's really the size of the problem. So the more that we as a physical therapist can evaluate that physical piece, educate them and give them that knowledge so that they understand, you know, yes, it hurts when you walk, but you're not causing yourself further harm. This is to be expected. This is normal. This is part of the healing process. That really then minimizes the emotional component of it and helps them let go of that. And then they have that ability to let go of that and that negative energy they're holding on to. And then they have that hope and that belief that change is possible, and they're ready to let that good energy come in. So, you know, I kind of think I've always seen that I treat all three, which is kind of, to me, it's like the heart, the mind, and the soul of the patient, right? With the body. Yeah. Because you can't just treat the body. There's a living, breathing human being, and they're all individual. You know, I've treated bazillions of back pain patients. I've never met two that are the same. You know?
Yeah, for sure. There's the whole myriad surrounding their lives is completely different, right?
Yes.
Their experience.
Their age, their history, their mindset, you know, whether they want to hold on to this and they want to stay in the victimhood, or they want to, you know, they want to let it go, and they're just waiting for you to give them permission and to tell them that they don't have to feel that pain, that it will go away. So it's fascinating to watch the psychology of that develop with people.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And so, okay, so with everything that's going on right now with worldwide pandemic, I feel like a lot of people are, when you talk about the emotional component and people creating a story or having, you know, a huge attachment to, you know, fears and like pains of, you know, what does this mean for me and the instability in my life and so on and so forth. What would you say are some of the things that people could be doing right now to, you know, if they are experiencing physical pain, to help lessen it? Because like I said, I really feel like on a global scale, there's so much going on right now that would really like enhance the emotional component and therefore the physical component.
Definitely. I think that the most important thing for all of us to hold on to right now is that it's temporary, right? It's going to change, it's going to improve, and we can take this as an opportunity to reflect on where we're at and where we want to go. You know, we are all experiencing this pandemic, but we are definitely experiencing it differently, right? Some people still have their jobs and they're working from home. Some have lost their jobs. Some have gotten sick. Some have not. Some are really letting the fear take over. Others are saying, I'm just going to keep living my life, right? So, I mean, we're not going through the same experience. And I think that to give yourself that grace and that permission to be wherever you are. And I don't know about you or anybody else, but I feel like where I am depends moment to moment. Like moment I'm all right, the next moment I like, you know, get hit with something and I'm a crying, seething, angry mess, and it's like, oh, what happened here? But I think to just accept that. I mean, you cannot control. None of us can control this pandemic. None of us can even really, we say we can control ourselves. I think we can accept ourselves, right? And accept that whatever it is you're feeling, you're entitled to it. And to let yourself have those feelings and to just observe them and sit with them and be kind to yourself and have self-compassion. But then I think the next step is to say, all right, well, what is this feeling telling me? You know, I think that's where we can not be stuck in that victim mindset or that loss of control mindset. You know, we're not responsible for the first thought we have, but we certainly can choose and change the next thought we have, right? So like, you know, when I'm struggling with homeschool and I'm like, oh, I can't take this, like that's that feeling I have in a moment. But the very second next thought I can have is, yes, I can survive this. And yes, I will survive this. And yes, I will help my son and support him and do what I have to do. Right. But then my third thought probably needs to be, I have to also remember to take care of myself and honor my own needs too. So, you know, trying to be in control of what we can be in control of, our own mindset, definitely trying to make sure we're doing our self-care. The great thing here is that most people have an opportunity to catch up on their sleep debt that they've been under. We, I think as Americans, are chronically sleep deprived, and that's
Yeah.
really important for wellness and for healing and for chronic pain. So, you know, certainly getting yourself on a better sleep schedule or establishing a sleep routine, this is a great time to do it. And I think also scheduling into your day some time for movement. You know, I think, I don't know about you, but I feel like my days and weeks have blurred into each other. And I actually feel like I'm working harder than I ever have because I get up and I do homeschool and then
Yeah.
I work late at night and then I go to bed and it's lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of realized a couple days ago that I had really lost all of my good wellness routines that
Yeah.
I established that were serving me well before this pandemic happened. So, you know, I think if that helps to put in those routines and those schedules back in to make sure that you're eating well, that you're, you know, taking your vitamins, that you're sleeping well, that you're staying hydrated, that you know, if you have a morning practice or you have a meditation practice, put that back in, that you are getting some exercise. And it, you know, maybe you can't go to the gym, maybe you can't take your favorite class, but maybe you can find a replacement online, or you can learn a new thing, or you can just go for a walk outside in nature. That's good enough, you know?
I yeah. I was gonna say, like, I think a really big thing for me and for probably other people, and especially moms, is trying to continually let go of the standards that you used to adhere to,
Yeah.
um, and just find a way to let those go now, because
Yeah.
it's all different now and we're like operating with less space, less time, less, just
Resources. Less
resources.
help.
Yeah, exactly. Just
Yeah.
find a way to stop comparing you to you.
Right.
And just, yeah, that's a
And
big.
I think for us moms, I know for me, so, being a single mom for a couple of years now, and my family's in California and I'm in New York. So I'm it. I am all of love that showed up today to, do what needs to be done for my kids. But on the flip side, I think, I had recently read Glennon Doyle's book,
Untamed.
Untamed. And I really, her concept of this, as women, as mothers, that our highest compliment that we can pay ourselves is to say that I'm selfless. And I know for me that I can't even say I ever lost myself, because I don't think I ever had myself until a couple years ago. And so it really resonates with me that, I don't think that we need to be selfless for our children. I think in establishing those boundaries and establishing those times that are for us, we are showing them, we show people how we want to be treated. So
I
we
couldn't
are
agree more.
showing our children, and I have 3 boys that are 11, almost 16 and 20. So, I've got boys to men here in my house, but, I think just for me, for myself, to have a self and to put my needs on the list somewhere. And certainly because I'm a mother, I will set my needs aside when their needs trump mine, because they're children and I think they have that right. But I also think it's healthy for them to see me set boundaries and to make time for myself and to have a seat at the table and to have an opinion at the table. And that's kind of where I'm at personally right now. I can't tell you how that social experiment plays out, but
No, I couldn't agree more. Like I feel like I've gone through a lot in my life as well. And although with kids it is a balance. I mean, the
yes,
concept of selfishness, like you're saying, especially like if you have like an infant or like you
yes,
typically do need
you
to put
have
their
to
needs
take
ahead
care
of
of them.
yours, like
Yeah,
a lot of the time. And that's just, purely allowing your children to survive and,
yes,
thrive. But on the other hand, when you talk about selfishness in the way that I think you mean it, which is basically making sure that you give yourself the space and the time to know who you are and to,
right.
honor who you are through, seeking out and finding fulfillment by doing those things. Like that's, I really believe, the best thing that you can do for your kids, because that's how they need to see you. They need to see that life is good and that like it as a sea of adults that they're all looking at. The last thing they need is to see a bunch of, schlumping adults that are
Right.
despising their lives and
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
maintaining the status quo, because
Yes.
that is not going to inspire any child to want to
Be an adult.
well want to find their own joy too. And
Yeah,
I don't mean, and I mean, when I say joy, I mean, like deep seated like fulfillment. I don't mean
absolutely.
like fleeting happiness that you
Yes.
get from receiving a new toy.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. And so
Yeah.
I
Like that
couldn't
life,
agree
that
more.
deep down life satisfaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
That,
Well, I think one thing my therapist told me when I first kind of needed to work on my self-care was that self-care is not selfish.
no,
Taking care of yourself is not selfish. And
no.
that I think I think our kids, honestly, I think we've almost trained them to be selfish, because they live in this now generation where it's
Yeah.
like, what I want I should have now, and what I
Yeah.
want mom and dad should hand to me right away. And I think in the Glennon Doyle book, I think she gives an example about being up. She was up for bringing bagels and cream cheese to the soccer practice, and some parent said, I really think we should give them all 5 kinds of cream cheese. And she said she thought about it, and she was like, is that really what makes a child happy, or is that what makes a child an a-hole? And I remember laughing so hard, because I personally think that's what makes a child an a-hole, when they can have anything they want whenever they want, because they want. And our job is just to purely be here to taxi them around and immediately meet their needs and
No.
never question and never help them learn or work for it or earn it, I think we're doing them a grave disservice, because when we're not there, and there should be a time when we're not there, but when we're not there, we won't have given them the skills and the self-confidence that they can take care of themselves, right?
It's so funny. Laura just joined, and I know it's so funny because so many people have been telling me about this book, and Laura, you were the first person to tell me about it, and now Tina, you're telling me about it, and I really feel like I need to read this book, because
you need to read this book.
I completely agree with you. I mean, it's not it can be a challenge too, and like we're living in this like overstimulation of information age, and I know that sentence didn't come out great, but like we're constantly, as a mom, I feel like there's such an abundance of like how you should do it and shouldn't do it, and like
okay, you shouldn't. I don't like telling people you should. I would invite you to read the book when you're ready. I don't want to put any more shoulds on you than you have.
Yeah, no, I mean, you always find time for what you need, right? And what you want. And it seems like this would be a great book. Okay, so Tina, like, where can people find you? Like what are you doing right now? And it seems like you have so much to offer. And
thank you.
In so many ways, like to me, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is that it just really seems like a lot of people right now are feeling a lot of pain, and so yeah, I'm interested to know how they can learn more or consult with you, or yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a website that is under construction, but it does have a landing page, so people can go to it and they can enter in their information and get on my email list, so I can let them know when it's up and running. Hopefully it'll be up and live by the end of the month. But it's www.thekeytomovementandwellness.com. And on Instagram, I am at keytomovementandwellness.com. On Facebook, I'm Christina Tickler Wellsome, and I have a Facebook group that's free and open to the public that's also called, surprise, the Key to Movement and Wellness.
So that's really that's your community, right?
That's me. Yeah. And I try to post, a good book I've read, a free class somebody's offering, a quote, anything that I find that I think, touched me or helped me think or helped raise my awareness. I'm definitely, I would say, most active on Instagram. I definitely, I post every day, and I love to engage in conversations, or, if people want to reach out to me there, you can DM me on Instagram as well. I am currently writing a book about getting in touch with your emotions, and kind of how somebody moves from a place of feeling no self-worth and feeling like they have no value, and kind of working through that self-care, self-awareness, self-compassion, hopefully getting to a place of self-love, because I really think that relationship with ourselves is important. So I'm working on that at the moment. And then I am going to be running small group, like mastermind or coaching sessions. I can do it either, individually if somebody feels more comfortable working with me one-on-one, or if they would like to be in a small group where they feel, they get to know the people and they can learn from each other and learn from other people's experiences. And sometimes I think in support groups and things like that, the real value is knowing you're not alone. It's kind of like, when you take your kid to a birthday party and they act like as much of a jerk as every other 6-year-old there, you're like, oh, phew, it's not just my child, it's every 6-year-old boy, right? So I'll be offering those, and I will post that information on Instagram, on Facebook, and on my website, so people will know when those are happening. But I really want to, be a source of knowledge and experience, kind of from my professional place and my life experience, but to create these spaces where people can show up and know it is a safe place to share how they feel, and to be vulnerable, and to know they're not alone, and to help. I think really what I love is helping people see that there is hope and there's possibility, things maybe they hadn't considered, but also helping them when they come up with those barriers of, I just don't have time, I just don't have money, I just can't fit it into my day. yeah, you can. And let's figure out how we remove those barriers and make it possible for you, because I do want people to unlock their true potential and to lead lives that they love. You know, life's too short to be miserable. So that's kind of, I think, where I'm headed with things, is creating these places that are ongoing communities for people at different stages to really show up and be present and take what they need. And you know, sometimes it's better to give, because sometimes when you're giving to somebody, you actually gain more from it. But to have that give and take and that support and that accountability is really kind of what I'm looking to create.
That's great. And it's going to be needed more than ever. So
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. So everything's in your profile, the key to movement and wellness.
Mm-hmm. And actually, if you follow me on Instagram at Key to Movement and Wellness, in my bio there's a link tree link that actually has buttons to all of the things that I have available. So that's Perfect. Probably the easiest place to find everything.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I am. You know, I was just thinking about this earlier, and you know, on one hand, there's so much uncertainty and you know, unknowing going into the future. But on the other hand, I really feel like this is a time that has been a catalyst for so many people to come into a version of themselves that is, you know, more awakened and more consciously aware. And so I really think that it's an incredible time to be alive, but we're going to also need resources and, you know, people like you to help guide people to this place. There are a lot of people that it seems to me are like on the precipice, you know, this is kind of shoving them over the edge.
Yes.
So yeah.
I agree. And it's interesting. One of my friends said to me, I guess we were about a month into quarantine here in New York, and she said to me, she's like, why are you so calm? Like, it's really, everybody else is freaking out and you're so calm. And I'm like, oh, I have my freak out moments, and she's seen them. She's my good friend. But I do think for me, you know, they always say, right, when you're going through something, you might not really realize the blessing that it is. But I think for me, where I've been in my personal life the last 2 to 5 years, I had to work through a lot of these things that I think people are facing now. And so I'm, you know, about 5 years ahead of you, you know, not to say that in a bragging way. I've just suffered for that, you know, that time, and kind of worked through a lot of that myself. And so for me, you know, it's kind of like, all right, here we go. I thought that my life was changing and things were going to be moving towards the positive, and now we've got this pandemic. But on the flip side, like, I feel like I came into it very prepared, because my mindset and my heart and my, you know, my core desired feelings were already set. And so it's definitely been an asset to me. So I'm grateful that I've been through that to be at the point where I am now.
I couldn't agree more. And I completely empathize with that, for sure. Well, I'm so happy you're here and that you're able to be in this place to share what you know with other people. So thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Same. Do I have to go back to my quarantine house with school, or can I just stay here?
No, just stay by the lake.
I wonder if I call, if they'll DoorDash or Grubhub me some lunch in my car. I'm working in my mobile office.
I know. Yeah, no. I would stay put as long as possible.
No, I'll go back. It's my oldest's birthday, so I got to go bake a birthday cake. Yes.
Wow. Well, happy birthday, and happy belated birthday to you as well.
Thank you.
Birthday. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you. But it was lovely talking to you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.